Hey guys, it's Joe again from Finding Faith, and I wanted to expand on my intro video a little bit. So if you watched me take the mental age test, you kind of have more of a sense of who I am as a person, how I look at the world a little bit. You know, I want to do fun videos like that once in a while. But really looking back on my intro video, I can see that while I put myself out there, I generally explained why I did it. I didn't explain some of the goals, and there's a difference between the two. So I want to talk about the goals of this channel. There are 4 primary goals that I have with this channel. Goal number 1, I want to bring people to Christ who, want to believe, but, are not attending churches for any number of personal reasons. 2, I want people who are with Christ and are suffering for whatever reason, whether or not you're aware of it, to be encouraged to look at things anew, because we all need fresh perspectives on Christ once in a while. We can, go down one path for years and get stuck in a rut, and we need little ways to break out. 3, I want people who just have no plan of believing in our Lord, not just to think a little bit differently about things, but think of how you can get a healthier view of those of us who do believe in the God of the Bible. And 4, my opinion, this may be the most important of them, because it's still hard for me, is I want us to just, as people, be better about humanizing each other. Alright, I want to go through all 4 of those a little bit more in depth, and eventually I'm going to do videos that focus on each of them. For those of you who want to believe, but aren't attending church, aren't reading the Bible, you name it, I get it. The Bible doesn't seem like a particularly exciting book at first. Church attendance is, it seems kind of boring. I do also think that the church is kind of stigmatized in today's society. Though there are valid points, I think that those valid points miss a much greater point. I want to emphasize, this is not something you can do on your own. Yeah, you can, find out a lot by, Googling stuff. Think about it. There's hundreds of commands in the New Testament that involve 2 very crucial words. One another. One another. The idea of togetherness is so important in the Bible. I get wanting to be one's own person. I really do. I get having differences with the church, with pastors, other members, theology, you name it. I understand. But that's not what it's about. What the God of the universe wants from us is relationship with Him and relationship with each other. And we can only get this through an organized gathering of believers, the church. And a lot of people, unfortunately, worship the church. A lot of people even worship Christianity or other religions that, come out of the Bible. That's not what it's about. It is all about God, about Christ. And the church was created as a place of worship, a place to learn and grow and find God, not find a religion. So what I'm trying to get at is the church is really just a means to a much greater end. And, whatever problems you may have with the church, however legitimate they may or may not be, it's still something you have to come to understand. And it's something that, it takes time to truly love, but it's worth it. Love is always worth it as long as it is for a healthy cause, and I promise you, this is a healthy cause. So that's why I would encourage you to start attending a local church if this is something that interests you. For my second goal, for those of you who are already with God but are suffering, whether or not you're aware of it, this is part of our existence, you guys. We want to naturally avoid suffering. I completely understand that, but it's just part of the nature of this world that we live in. 1 Peter 2:20 is a really good verse about suffering, about how we can honor God through our suffering. The entire book of Job is wonderful for explaining suffering. And a lot of the Psalms talk about suffering and still praising God during our times of suffering. Suffering is meant to bring us closer to God. But what we do when we suffer is we withdraw, sometimes from other people, almost always from God, and that's very problematic. So if you're suffering right now, I would just encourage you to, instead of withdrawing, take that step, go to God. It's scary, it's not necessarily fun, but it's worth it, and go to your local community church and, the people within your social network. James 5:16 talks about confessing your sins to one another for healing. This is a wonderful way of doing that. Even if it's not sin, even if it's just suffering, there is healing in talking about what's on your heart. Now, unfortunately, sometimes we suffer without even realizing it, or we're believing something that's false, that's causing suffering, or not even that's causing suffering, that seems to be fine in the short run, or even in the long run. But that still eventually causes suffering on some level. The point here is that so many people have an unhealthy view of Christ that leads them farther away from God. Think about it. If you have an unhealthy view of a person in a relationship, you're not really in relationship with them. You're in relationship with your version of them. And think about how harmful that is for relationships. Sometimes this happens because people are genuinely misled. Sometimes it happens, because of our pride, because we would rather believe something, that makes sense to us than the truth. There's this tendency, even though God made us in His image, we tend to want to return the favor. We tend to want to make God into our own image. So this is something that, because it's important, we have to kind of check ourselves on a little bit. And this is why I want to do videos on this, because this is extremely important. He's provided a way. We just have to walk in it. Third, if you find yourself being one of those people who just thinks there's no way you're going to believe in the stuff that I'm talking about or stuff that you've heard from other people related to this, I do still want you to get something out of this channel. And you need to come to the realization that you're going to have to face a few things. First of all, inevitably, people who believe in the God of the Bible. Even if your social network doesn't consist of any of them, you still will encounter them in your life. It's impossible not to. There's doctors, police officers, therapists, clerks, people of all careers who believe in the God of the Bible. And you just have to be ready to encounter them at some point. Now, you may be one of those people that I see on Facebook, and there's kind of a vulgar term for this that I don't really care for, who just, constantly share everything that you see that's against religion, against Jesus and God. Even though the people who are reading your post may not be personally hurt by it, it does still affect relationship. It causes distance. And, even if you kind of are okay with that with certain people, then you still need to understand the effect that you're having and how that's more hurting you than it's hurting the people that you're distancing yourself from. By posting these things, you're also potentially breeding contempt. This is, sometimes more extreme, sometimes it's very subtle, sometimes it takes years to build up, but posting like that inevitably breeds contempt. Now, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't say that there are Christians who post, some pretty rude, overly conservative stuff, or, just callous things about non-believers. I'm sorry for them. I really am. I feel sorry for them. I'm sorry for the effect that they have on you and other people like you. They don't reflect well on the Christian community. But with that said, we are not the things that we post. We are not the things that we say. They do speak about us, and I'd like to talk more about that in a future video, but we can't define ourselves that way, and we shouldn't define other people that way. Beyond just the idea of, living with other people who believe differently than you, you're going to have to face the fact that there's a lot of evidence for the events in the Bible. There's a lot of science that suggests very heavily that it makes more sense that we were actually created as opposed to forming from nothing, and I want to do more videos on that later. But with that being said, this is stuff you have to look at. I do want to share a quote from an AV Club article that I read that talks about atheism. AV Club is not by any means a believing website, but this is an article they did in reference to Bill Maher. Bill Maher? Yeah, so it was in reference to him, and it talked a little bit about atheism. So listen to this quote. Unfortunately, after a while, the limits of atheism as a political stance became evident. Maher never tied his atheism to any meaningful cause beyond rejection of its dogma. Wow. I mean, that's very well put, though. Atheism is more about standing against something than it is standing for something else. And while I think Christianity and some Christians can, suffer from this a little bit too, that doesn't mean that you suffering from that makes you okay. It just means that you're kind of on the same plane as them. Now, with that said, if you can back up why you're for the things you're for, then, you know, that's very important for affirming your own beliefs. I think that's something that you should look into. I also don't think you should be dismissive of the Bible. I think when you find a question that doesn't make sense to you and seems like a contradiction, you should try and work it out. The Bible has been around for as many years as it has for a reason, because it makes sense. People have asked every question that you have, I'm sure, and there are answers. I have been very satisfied whenever I find a question and I look it up with the answer. Now, with that said, there's the occasional question that has kind of a vague answer and you have to work it out yourself, but normally there's extra biblical evidence that you can look at to find, and you can usually find the answer. Sometimes you have to, talk with someone. You can't just Google it all the time, but a lot of the times you can. On one hand, I can understand saying I don't believe it because of these reasons, whether they're personal, whether they're evidence-based, or both. You should be looking into this stuff better, backing up your stance, because these are questions that are going to come back to haunt you eventually. Fourth, in my opinion, this is what's most important to me in terms of all of these goals that I've been talking about: the greater humanization, just in all of our hearts towards everyone, including ourselves, including our family, friends, people we'll never meet, people of different races, genders, so on and so forth. We need greater humanization in this world, especially for those of us who think differently than other people. We need to be able to greatly humanize them. So I want to talk a little bit about empathy, because empathy is something that I've really tried to work on a lot personally. Most people think of empathy as, just taking yourself, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And that's a really good start, but true empathy doesn't really end there. That's just the beginning. In my mental age test video, one of the questions related to Miley Cyrus, and I talked about how if I lived her life and if I had her personality, basically if I was her, I would make those same decisions. That's a much greater way to try and understand empathy that I've been trying to apply. It's not necessarily easy or natural or anything. I found that that's very helpful in, understanding where someone's coming from. They're different than you inherently. You might have different experiences than them that help you see things that they don't, and vice versa, but you can't blame someone for being who they are. That's just unreasonable. You wouldn't want someone to do that to you. Why should you do that to them? And think about it. If we all did this, think about how much less hostile the world would become. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would be a lot better than where we are. And while it's tempting to say, oh, that person should be doing this, oh, this person needs to do that, that's not wrong, but we need to start with ourselves. And, they may not take to our example or anything, but think about how much more uplifting this can be for you as a person if you start to try and apply this. And in terms of just, getting the process started for greater humanization, I think the best way to really start doing this is by talking with other people. Not just talking to them, talking at them, but listening, asking questions, taking that moment, before you say, oh, you must think this, wait, no, do they think that? How do they think about that? Why did they think about that? What's their background in this? That's how you build greater relationship. That's how you start to humanize people who think differently than you. It's not easy. I'm still getting better at this. I still sometimes fall short. But since I've been trying to apply this, I've had a much healthier outlook on life, and I wanted to be able to share this with you guys. I'm going to talk way more about this in the future, of course. And if you don't get anything out of this channel, this is what I hope you get out of it. Through the various videos that I plan on doing, from me talking about my shortcomings in this area, I have definitely been very dismissive of people in the past, and that's hurt me more than it's hurt them, because it's easier for you to reject someone who thinks badly of you, but when it's someone rejecting you because of how you dismiss them, even if you don't realize how it's affecting them or that it is affecting them in the first place, then that just sucks. That is a really painful feeling. I don't want any of you to experience that any more than you absolutely have to. And I think that by applying some of these principles and some of the things that I'm going to talk about in the future, this can happen a lot less. And we can start to lead better, healthier lives as a result. Ultimately, no matter where you stand with God, these things are important to apply. And I think that there's a lot of biblical evidence that says these are things that we're supposed to do. So whether or not you choose to believe in the God of the Bible, I really hope you get something out of, these videos that I talk about. And I do think that God brings a lot of confidence in our lives, and that there's a lot of advantage to putting your faith and trust in God as opposed to just in yourself. And I'll talk more about that in a future video too. Yeah, and those are the general goals of my channel. I still have a long ways to go. You're going to hear me say that in most every video. But I think that this channel is going to help. I hope you guys help, and that I get to help you guys as well, to encourage you to be active in your local communities, to really find out who you can become through God, or even just through, learning to listen better to other people. This is going to be a very exciting journey, and I'm looking forward to going on it with you guys. For the moment though, I just want you to think about which of those 4 categories you fall into. And you can fall into more than one. I'd say kind of fall into 2 a little bit here and there, but I definitely fall into 4. I need these humanization skills. I'm going to keep working on this myself. I'm going to keep constantly trying to apply these principles and talk with people more locally as opposed to just doing videos with you guys. This is only a small part of, I guess, what you would call the ministry of my life. Now I can't stress this enough, there will be days when I'm going to need the stuff that I'm talking to you about. And inevitably I'm going to get somewhat personal talking about this stuff, because I want to encourage you guys to feel like you can talk about this stuff personally. Whether you want to contact me in the comments or what have you, or whether you want to talk with others about this. I think this is something that you guys should be doing, and it's something that I'm trying to get better about too. And even if you don't want to go down the path that I'm going down, I think it's important to watch people you disagree with to see where they're coming from and gain greater empathy, and just figure out how you can be more loving. Every sane person would agree that being more loving is important. Plus, who knows how you could change. And this video has gone on way too long. I apologize. So thank you for watching to the end. Really appreciate your dedication in listening to me and being open to what I have to say, no matter where you stand in those 4 categories. It means a lot that you did that. So, as always, please like, share, comment, be ready for the next video when it comes out. Every little thing that you do for this channel, it doesn't help me so much as a person as it helps other people who might need this. Maybe someone who needs this. Maybe when you share it, it'll come to someone eventually who needs it. So that's what I would really encourage you guys to do with this video and with my other videos. My videos are going to be on Mondays and Fridays. I'm going to aim for the mornings, unless I have something going on that's kind of non-negotiable early in the morning. There's going to be a couple mornings like that, unfortunately, in which case, the video's not up. It's going to be up in the evening on those days. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a blessed day, blessed night, depending on when you're watching. And I look forward to, hearing more about your journeys, and look forward to seeing you guys around next couple videos or so. Alright. Thanks again.